Good evening and welcome to The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. We're coming to you from our ZTN studios in Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. I'm Eben Mabunda. Now, Zimbabweans on August 23 elected their desired candidates for local council, parliament, and a president for the next 5 years. ZANU-PF candidate Emmerson Dambuzo Mnangagwa won the presidency by 2,350,711 votes, equating to 52.6%, beating Nelson Chamisa of the Triple C, who got 1,967,343, translating to 44%. That, of course, is according to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. This post-election period has brought its fair share of drama. The Citizens Coalition for Change, Triple C, has refused to concede defeat and rejects the results. They are calling for fresh elections. ZANU-PF, on the other hand, has already called for the country to move on from the election, saying it's back to business for them. They've already formed a new government. We saw new ministers being sworn in earlier this week. However, the election process drew divided opinion among voters, participants, and observers, citing irregularities. On the other side, we also have other stakeholders who gave their stamp of approval that the elections were free and fair. Today, here on ZTN Prime, we will discuss the state of security and peace in the country after this election season. Now, in an exclusive interview here on ZTN Prime, we'll sit down with Paul Nyati, Assistant Commissioner of Police and National spokesperson of the Zimbabwe Republic Police. His organization, the ZRP, is responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of peace and security before, during and after elections, and of course in general all the time. Our discussion today is post-election inside Zim's security situation. Join me tonight with my guest. You are watching The Chase, Zimbabwe's premier current affairs program. We're broadcasting to you from our ZTN studios in Zimbabwe, Harare. I'm Eben Mabunda. Now, to discuss post-election inside Zimbabwe's security situation, I'm joined in the studio by ZRP National Spokesperson, Assistant Commissioner Paul Nyati. Commissioner, good evening and welcome to The Chase.
Thank you, Eben.
Fantastic. Now, note that all views expressed on The Chase are those of our guests and do not reflect the views of Zim Papers 1980 Limited or those of ZTN Prime. To our viewers watching ZTN Prime, please join this discussion via social media handles at Zim Papers TV Network as well as at ZTN Prime. Your views and thoughts are important to us. Now, to cut to the chase, Commissioner. Elections, of course, have come and gone. We have seen reports of political parties before the election complaining that the police were banning their rallies and arresting their supporters and candidates. What's your assessment in brief of the security situation in the country before and during the two-day election period?
Thank you very much, Eben. Firstly, the Zimbabwe Republic Police wants to remind the public that in terms of the country's constitution, the police has got a mandate, has got a responsibility to maintain law and order in the country so that the various socio-economic activities can take place. And with regards to the elections, the period before the elections, during and after the elections, you remember we were guided by, one, the constitution of the country, secondly, the Electoral Act, then we also guided by the Maintenance of Peace and Order Act, Chapter 2.13. So basically, you know, the police is happy with what prevailed before the elections and after the elections. The country currently is enjoying relative peace. However, we took note of some clashes which occurred before the elections. And these clashes where we find that they resulted in the death of a person in Glenview. But all in all, the clashes could not affect the holding of peaceful, free, and credible elections from the police perspective. And we are also happy with the coordination which the Zimbabwe Public Police did with the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission in terms of make sure that everything that was done, the electoral processes were conducted in a peaceful environment.
Now, Commissioner, you get a sense that tensions are running high at the moment in the country, with, of course, the opposition calling for fresh elections and utter rejection of the results that were presented by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. Now, question is, what is your assessment of the security situation in the country following the pronouncements of the results?
Eben, we have maintained our deployments, the deployments which we did before the elections. During the two-day voting process, remember, the voting day was 23 August 2023, which was extended to 24th August 2023. And up to now, our police officers are still on the ground monitoring the situation. And on the ground, the situation, to be quite honest, is peaceful. People are free to go about their various activities without any hindrance, without any form of threats or disturbance. However, Eben, we have noted the abuse, if I may call it, of the social media, where you find that on a daily basis there are people who are issuing out the threats. People who are indicating that we are going to have a demonstration on this particular day, we are going to do this activity, can we, form up at this particular venue? All sorts of activities are taking place at the social media platform. And some of them, as the police, we have monitored and discovered that some of the people who are issuing these threats, some of the people who are misusing the social media to cause alarm, to cause despondence in the country, there are people who are outside the country, specifically Zimbabweans, who are recording some of their, clips, then post it on social media, where you find that they have no due regard for the peace, for the law, and we are monitoring. And we have said the public should not listen, should not take heed of these misguided elements who are abusing the social media. And I'm happy to say so far we have not had any instances despite what the social media abusers are doing.
Right, making reference, beg your pardon, making reference to that particular aspect of the social media and the flies that are calling for some form of protest, of course, in sentiment to the results that were issued by the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. What does the law say with regards to the procedure for protest, and also with these that are seeking to protest? Will you allow them to carry on any protests in the country?
Eben, we've made it clear that in terms of the maintenance of Peace and Order Act, anyone who wants to engage in any form of political activity here we mean whether it's a demonstration, it's a petition, or it's a gathering, they have to notify the local regulating authority for the area where they intend to do those political activities. So as long people are engaged in illegal activities, in unlawful activities, I can assure you the law will take its course. And at the same time, I want to appeal to politicians to lead by example and work with the police so that we have effective maintenance of law and order in the country. There is nothing to hide if people are having political activities. There is no need to grandstand. People should just comply with the provisions of MOPA. And the provisions of MOPA are very clear that any convener of a political gathering has to work with the police in terms of the security arrangements. They have to ensure that whatever arrangements are done, the police have got an input in those arrangements so that we protect not only people who want to have the gathering, but other members of the society, members of the public who want to continue their normal day-to-day activities. So it's not cast in stone that if Eben or if John wants to do a demonstration, and then their demonstration will go ahead disregarding the rights of others. I think that's where we also call upon politicians to tell their supporters, to tell their members the truth.
Right now, that spoke, of course, to the element of protest. Now, closely linked, but perhaps of a different nature, is that element of there being press conferences by different political actors spread across the country. And the opposition accuses the state security of infringing and impinging on their ability to carry out press conferences, and they blame it on the police and other security agents for should I say, meddling in some of the activities in that particular order. How do you respond to that, and what is the stance of the police where that is concerned?
When press conferences are called, if these press conferences are not political activities, the Zimbabwe Public Police has no problems with that. But where you find that people, they call the so-called press conferences, they utter political statements, they incite violence, they issue out threats. In terms of the country's laws, the police definitely have to move in and find out what is happening and protect the public. The whole idea is to protect the public. And that's why I'm saying we need politicians who lead by example. We don't need politicians who grandstand, where at the end of the day, if something sinister happens, they quickly disown that particular activity, yet in actual fact, they will be on the forefront of agitating for lawlessness in the country.
Right. On the 29th of August, you issued a press statement warning of illegal gatherings and also taking note the issue of offensive messages on social media. Have you made any arrests thus far?
We were conducting investigations, Eben, and I remember some of the people whom were looking for some of the suspects, they have made it clear that they are now out of the country, they've run away. We are currently pursuing several suspects whom we have monitored on the social media platforms. And as alluded to in my earlier remarks, we have discovered that some of these suspects, they are not resident in the country, but they are Zimbabweans who are issuing out threats whilst they are outside the country.
Right. Now, there were and are reports of people who were stationing themselves near polling stations around the country doing what they termed exit polls. One name, of course, which would quickly come to mind is Fuzz. Some critics claimed this was intimidation and perhaps unlawful in as far as the Constitution is concerned. Now, as ZRP, what is your comment on these allegations, and what action did you take concerning this?
First and foremost, in terms of the Electoral Act, particularly looking at the voting day activities at polling stations, they were being coordinated by the presiding officer. And the Zimbabwe Public Police was working closely with presiding officers. And if there were illegal activities, unlawful activities taking place at polling stations, the Zimbabwe Public Police would take action in consultation with the presiding officers. And I can confirm that on the voting day, we received numerous reports, and the police quickly acted on these reports which were coming in. Some of the reports, they were just hoaxes. Some of them, we had to coordinate with the presiding officers and made sure that no one interfered with the voting processes. And this, I mean it, and we have got records to show that we did not receive any major incident where we could say there were groups or there were individuals who interfered with the voting processes on the 23rd or on the 24th of August. However, we are aware that there are people who are raising various allegations, and we have said, if people have got allegations which are criminal, which they think the Zimbabwe Public Police can investigate, then they are free to bring those concerns to the Commissioner General of Police, and I can assure you investigations will be conducted.
Right. Now, there are complaints against the Zimbabwe Republic Police. You're being accused of arresting staff from the Election Resource Center and the Zimbabwe Election Support Network, allegedly for parallel vote tabulation. My first question to you is parallel vote tabulation illegal?
As far as we are concerned, the body which is mandated by the country's constitution to manage elections is the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. There is a difference between an observer and an election management body. So where you find that there are people who are now running parallel structures, just like the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, people who are now tabulating election results, yet they are supposed to be observers, then we have a problem. We will not allow people to openly contravene the country's laws under the guise of certain civic organizations. And we have said civic organizations should ensure that in whatever activity they are undertaking, they perform those activities taking cognizance, full cognizance of the country's laws, so that whatever happens, people will not cry foul. And this is the position of the Zimbabwe Republic Police.
Just to jump in there, critics contend that tabulating is one thing, but pronouncement is another. And yet they were arrested without pronouncement, but on the basis of the tabulation. How do we make that assessment, and what instrument particularly did you use to come up with that particular stance?
This case is before the courts, Eben. I don't want to delve into the full gist of the matter, but suffice to say, are you aware that some of the people who were said to be tabulating, they were not registered as observers? Where you find that somebody is running a medical facility at a certain place in Milton Park, but they've got people who are going around getting voting statistics. Then are you aware that you've got people who were closed in a certain room? They were not allowed to leave the room. And the food was coming in such a manner that was raising allegations. And then you have got several houses, where people were renting offices. And they're renting offices for a month only. And then you have got people becoming emotional. They are saying we're tabulating the results for our partners. Who are the partners? Is it ZEC? Are they foreign entities? So the laws of the country are very clear. That's why I'm saying I urge Zimbabweans, I urge civic organizations to say, in whatever they are doing, they must lead by example. They must comply with the country's laws. Where they do not understand certain provisions of the law, then that's why the relevant arms of government are available to shed light and assist them.
At the same time, some reports state that there were some that were tabulating within the ruling party their own results. Did you receive any form of reports to that effect, and what stance was taken in that regard, if there were any reports that you received to that effect?
We did not receive such reports, Eben. That's why I'm saying if there is a person out there who have got a genuine case which he or she feels the Commissioner General of Police should look into, they are free to engage the Commissioner General of Police.
Right. Now, you put out a statement to the effect that you'll be monitoring the post-election period, and there are claims by members of the public and other political parties of intimidation and excessive show or display of force. There are reports of the use of water cannons and the support unit being seen roaming around, for example, the streets of Harare. Perhaps the question is, what is your comment on that? And secondly, where do we draw the line between an excessive use of force and the need for an increase in terms of the security presence?
First and foremost, Eben, the Zimbabwe Republic Police has a constitutional responsibility to maintain law and order whenever the public is engaged in various activities, be it social, economic, political. So what the police has done is to increase visibility. so that the public is assured of safety, is assured of security. Remember, we've had these people who have been issuing threats. So as the police, we have had to scale up our deployments in urban centers, in all places where the public will be gathered. And in terms of the so-called excessive use of force, I wonder what any particular individual or a certain entity who is raising those allegations will be trying to say. Because when you talk of excessive force, do we have anybody who was assaulted by police officers? No. Do you have anyone who was threatened by the police officers? No. So I get puzzled when people talk of excessive force. If the police shows the public the various tools of trade which are at its disposal, tools of trade availed by the government for the effective maintenance of law and order in the country, is that excessive use of force?
Right. Still on that particular subject, in Chitungwiza, there were some reports of police beating patrons and asking them to leave particular bars and particular places of leisure in what appears to have different elements and signs of a curfew. Now, the question is there any curfew in place? And is the ZRP effecting any curfews across the country, and for what reason?
We have said it, Eben, and we'll continue to say it. There is no curfew in the country at the moment. Before the elections, the Zimbabwe Republic Police received an official complaint from the Liquor Licensing Board about unlawful activities by certain liquor outlets who include nightclubs, who include beer halls, even shabins, where you find that criminal activities are taking place. For example, murder cases. We've had murder cases where people, they go to drink beer at shabins, where people, they go to some of the, proliferated liquor outlets which are not licensed, and the people, they wait there until as late as 1 a.m., 12 midnight. Then they target certain places, or they target certain individuals who believe in those drinking places. Then they attack. We've had people who have lost vehicles. We've had people who have died. We've had people who have lost money and cell phones and laptops. So in compliance with what was raised by the Liquor Licensing Board, we have an ongoing operation which is targeted at ensuring that anyone who's operating a nightclub, anyone who's operating a liquor outlet complies with the provisions of the Liquor Act, and no one should operate whether a beer hall, a nightclub, a bar, without having a license. So this is the official position, and I know there are people who have complained about that, and I want to urge the public to cooperate with the police officers as we close down liquor outlets which are not licensed.
Right. Currently, the Zimbabwe Republic Police has launched an operation codenamed Tame the Traffic Jungle, aimed, of course, against pirate transport operators known as Mushikashika. Of course, there are complaints from the public that this has had ripple effects in terms of the fares of transport spread across the country, especially in the metropolitan areas. Now, another concern also is that there aren't enough, for example, Zupco buses that allow and enhance the transportation of citizens to and from their workplaces. Now, people in some cases are having to get work late, and it's brought some degree of inconvenience in as far as the masses are concerned. Now, the question is the thought process behind this initiative, and perhaps the timing, given the resource constraints that we find in as far as the transport systems of Zimbabwe are concerned.
Even before this operation was launched, specifically last Monday, the Zimbabwe Republic Police had a consultative process where we engaged the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure Development, we engaged the VID, we engaged Transport Council of Zimbabwe, we engaged Zinara, Zimura, we engaged the City of Harare and other local authorities. This operation is being effected in conjunction with these stakeholders, because we we are targeting the lawlessness on the country's roads, where you find that there are people who are going through red robots, there are people who are driving against one way. Remember, we had an incident here in Harare last weekend, Saturday, where Okombi, which drove against one way along Robert Mugabe, just went out of the road. And in the process, 12 people were injured. And then you have got people who are picking passengers at undesignated points. And you have pirate taxis sprouting. We have made it difficult for the smooth flow of traffic in CBDs. For example, in Harare. And we are saying that should not be allowed to happen. Then you have got vehicles with no number plates sprouting. And some of these cars are being used to commit robbery cases, to commit rape cases, to commit kidnapping cases. Yet the law is very clear. If I look at the Vehicle Registration License Act, which clearly states that no vehicle should be moving on the country's roads without being registered. And we've been assured by Vieira, when we had our engagement last Monday, that the country has got adequate stocks of number plates. But surprisingly, people do not want to acquire number plates. And the law is also clear that if one imports a vehicle, that vehicle should not be used in the country using temporary plates. Instead, it should be taken to a place where it is safely parked until it is registered. But these days, you go on the roads, you see a pirate taxi using temporary number plates. Say the car came through the Tanzanian border, the South African border. People, they opt to display those number plates while it's carrying passengers. And when we have accidents, it becomes difficult for the police to track such culprits. So you can see that it's an operation which was long overdue. And also, in terms of the national regulations and the city bylaws, heavy trucks are not supposed to be crisscrossing residential suburbs, but they are doing it. In the process, they cause chaos and congestion on the country's roads. Then you also have haulage trucks which are carrying passengers. Just imagine. Something which should not be allowed to happen. That's why we are saying this operation is targeting a host of road traffic violations. And as of the 12th of September 2023, we had arrested over 1,960 suspects and impounded over 900 vehicles, which were clearly moving on the country's roads without complying with issues like the issue of insurance, the issue of road authority, road safety permits with the specific reference purposes vehicles. And we've also realized that in Harare, even in Bulawayo, most of the combis which have got expired permits, they are not renewing those permits. Yet the Road Motor Transport Authority, under the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure Development, they've made it clear that their offices are open for these operators to acquire the necessary permits and licenses. So definitely there's no room for lawlessness.
We are running out of time. May you speak to the scenario where you've got some of these cat and mouse chases, I'll put across that way, between the Mshika drivers and of course the police. What are you doing to ensure that there is safety in the process of the delivery of the police mandate in that regard, briefly?
So we have engaged the transport associations, for example, in Harare, GACO and others, ZUDAC and others, and implored them to ensure that their drivers lead by example, and also to encourage them to ensure that those who have got expired permits, they go and renew those permits. And also, where somebody has committed an offense, to wait and allow the due process of the law to be followed for the safety of passengers.
Right, and very quickly, we had a CCC legislator, Honorable Kademaungwa, who was arrested by the police, taken to the courts. When they got to the courts, the charges had actually been dropped. Can you take us through the process of arrest and also the process of charging individuals in this particular regard, and whether there is a thorough process in terms of the execution of the duties by the police in that particular area?
Eben, when a report is made to the Zimbabwe Public Police, it is the duty and responsibility of the police to conduct investigations. And with the specific reference to the case you are alluding to, the information which was made by the complainants, remember there were 3 complainants who had their vehicle torched in Sunningdale area on the 23rd of August. And one of the cars which was allegedly used during the commission of the crime, it belonged to the Kadimaunga, and it was the duty of the court to clear her. So as far as we are concerned, the police, we did our duty after an allegation was raised. So what happens at the court, it shows that the courts in Zimbabwe are working. It shows that the police and the justice delivery system in the country, we are one.
Assistant Commissioner Paul Nyati, the national spokesperson of the Zimbabwe Republic Police. So thank you for joining us on The Chase.
You're welcome.
Well, that's a wrap on tonight's episode of The Chase. Do follow us on our social media handles at Zim Papers TV Network as well as at ZTN Prime. Your thoughts and your views are important to us. Thank you for watching and have a good night.